So the threatening words, as in the previous text, that the palanquin was shaking about, and the king immediately asked the carriers, "Why are you carrying this palanquin unevenly? Better carry it properly." So that was the threatening words. Prabhupada says in the Bhagavatam that according to political science, the king, he sometimes pacifies, sometimes chastises, sometimes derides, and sometimes rewards. And in this particular case, there was a chastisement about to come. We're about to get told off for shaking the palanquin. So, any questions or comments?
Yeah, there's 4 ways in which the ruler deals with the subordinates. Sometimes, as far as I understand, this is from Niti Shastra, and devotees quite often comment on this 4 divisions. Is it correct for us to employ it in our dealings with others if we're in a position of responsibility? And if that is the case, should we try to, are they in a particular order? Is the first one the most desirable?
What's interesting about this particular situation is the palanquin carriers are being paid, they're being employed by the king, they're not voluntary. If they were voluntary, if they were buffers, and the king started chastising them, they may just say, okay, I'm out of here, I'm going to return ticket to Australia, and just let the palanquin go, and the king would roll up the palanquin and flop onto the ground, and then all the buffers would have run out, you see. So that's what happens when you have voluntary workers. There's a different dynamic going on. If you have people that are getting paid, then that's why it became very complicated with the Mahabharata, because you had great souls, very elevated, very high level of integrity, where they were being paid by somebody who was corrupt, and they felt, because of their honourable causes, that they should comply. So Srila Prabhupada emphasised that in a society where everyone is voluntary, then we have to be very careful how we interact with them. We may have been put in charge, but when you're put in charge in a spiritual society, it just means you take more responsibility. Really, it's not that you've got more facility to shout at people and tell them off. I mean, you can do that, you can shout at them and tell them off, but if they decide they don't want to do it anymore, then it becomes counterproductive. Prabhupada said the art is how to bend without breaking. So how to encourage people and to cultivate relationships which will allow it referred to as an emotional bank account. And there's different ways you can make deposits in an emotional bank account. And I'll tell you a story, but if I tell you the story, you have to promise not to burst into tears. or if you want to burst into tears, the tissues. And just here, so this man took his 2 sons out, and he took them, it was a treat for them, so they had ice cream, they went to the football match, and they went to the pictures, you know. And so everything was great, the kids were happy, but during the watching the film, it got a bit cool in the evening, and the father took his jacket off and put it over one of his sons who had fallen asleep. And the other son, who was the youngest one, he was watching his father do this. And so then he went very quiet and kind of melancholy. And his father was like, you know, and then they went for another treat somewhere, went for a pizza somewhere, and then finally they went back home, and he was tucking him in. And he said to his son, "What's wrong?" And his son said, if I'm cold, would you put your coat over me? So it's funny, isn't it? It's interesting how the father did all those things. Must have cost him so much as well. And it didn't cost him anything to put his coat over his son who was asleep. But that touched the heart of his little boy more than anything else. And then his boy wanted to know, you know, do you love me as much? So that's like it's a very little thing, but it's a very big deposit in the emotional bank account. Anyway, if you have relationships where the emotional bank account is very deep, and then you show you're upset about something, then the natural tendency is, oh, I'm sorry, let me do it the right way then. So the king didn't have that relationship, unfortunately, with the palanquin bearers. And in ISKCON it doesn't work so well to just push people around. The more proactive way is to cultivate such good relationships that when you ask for something to be done, the person is more than keen to want to do it, you see. So there's pacifying. I mean, we see with Srila Prabhupada, he did chastise sometimes, and he was very heavy sometimes. And sometimes he pacified, he was pacifying the sannyasis. Sometimes he derided. One time Pradyumna came, they were having there was a bit of a conflict going on about whether they'd landed on the moon or not. And Pradyumna was trying to fix the fire, and it blew up in his face. And he was covered in soot. And he came into the room, and everyone looked at Pradyumna, and Prabhupada said, "Oh, have you just been to the moon?" And everyone started laughing, you know. But Pradyumna didn't start laughing. He left not long after, actually. So Srila Prabhupada was just trying to, in a kind of very good-humoured way, kind of bring him up to speed with what he thought was going on anyway. So that was deriding, and then sometimes rewarding. And there's the nice story, isn't it, with Srila Prabhupada with Harikesh Maharaj, and he'd been sent to Russia, and he was feeling a little bit resentful that he'd been given such a tough service, but then suddenly everything flourished, and he came back, and Prabhupada was rubbing his head and he was crying, and he said, "Do you see now why I was doing it?" And he was saying, "Yes, Srila Prabhupada." So sometimes appreciating Krishna's rewards is an acquired taste. Sometimes we don't see at the time that Krishna was rewarding us. Like the king who had his finger cut off, right? And he said to his servant, "My finger's been cut off." And the servant said, "It's Krishna's mercy and your good fortune." And the king got really annoyed, and he said, "Well, if I throw you into jail, is that good for you?" "Oh yes, king, that's good. Okay, that's Krishna's mercy, right? Well, put him in the jail." And then the king went out, and he got caught by the Durga worshippers. They were going to sacrifice him, and he was a finger short, so they let him loose, and he ran back to the minister and said, "Oh, you were right, it was Krishna's mercy. But why was it Krishna's mercy that I put you in jail? Because I'm normally with you, and if I've got all 10 fingers, so I'd have been in the pot for the sacrifice." So it takes a certain amount of intelligence, actually, to be able to appreciate. That's why we emphasize very much studying, because if you want to acquire this taste of appreciating how Krishna is rewarding you, then you will need refined intelligence to do that. It's interesting, isn't it? It came up the other day in the Bhagavatam that the intelligence is like a sword, and the mercy sharpens the sword. So even though you may know the books inside out, whether or not you'll be able to put the knowledge into practice will depend upon whether you have mercy. Because if you're there with a sword and it's blunt, and you're fighting, and nobody's going down, you're hitting them on the head with the sword and smacking them, and they're just like, "Yeah, is that all you got?" So the sword has to be sharp, the knowledge has to be honed, and it's honed by receiving the mercy of the spiritual master. So it's very important for devotees to listen to their spiritual masters regularly, to listen to Srila Prabhupada regularly, to read regularly, so that we can receive this mercy, so that we can make advancement nicely. Any questions or comments?
There's another type of king.
Another type of thing?
King.
Oh, king. Another type of king.
Well, in olden times, they had absolute rule. Like, there's a freedom word that was saying how a king from Saudi Arabia is visiting the Tower of London, and he saw the guillotine and used to chop in people's heads.
Oh, yes, one of those sermons.
And then he said he wanted to see it in action, so he said, you go and put your head there, just let me see. And they were shocked, and he said to them, "You don't know what it is to be king."
Wow. problem with Kali Yuga is positions are abused. The Brahmins abuse their positions. You see that. That's why people are inclined to listen. They had a group of priests called the partners, and there was like going rates. You had like a chart, and you went to the partner and you said, "Oh, I've just hit my wife with a cricket bat," and you go, "Cricket bat, yeah, okay. That's 50 shillings." And if you gave them the 50 shillings, then you were pardoned, And how big was the cricket bat? It was 3 foot, okay, so that's 75 shillings. So according to what it was. So that was an abuse. And then the kings, of course, we know kings. We've got a whole history in England, haven't we? And Scotland as well. Kings that have really stepped over the mark and just gone on rants and just like Henry VIII. The servants were scared to go near him because he would just keep executing people if they did something wrong. They were petrified of Henry VIII. He was an ogre, so that was another abuse. Vaishyas, well, we know that Vaishyas are totally. The idea of a Vaishyas is like a cloud. It's supposed to take all the moisture up and then disperse it evenly. Everyone gets a share. That's what the Vaishyas. Now you've got people that are earning £120 billion a year, and no one sees a penny. You can't even tax them. So that's a total abuse of what the Vaishya is supposed to be doing. And then the Shudras are, they'll go anybody in that'll let them get away with whatever it is they want to get away with. Everything. So you have a body which is like the society is like a body, then the head's on back to front, the arms are all over the place, the belly's upset, and the legs are running in opposite directions. And then they're wondering why society is confused and things are going wrong.
Did you tell me that the Kshatriyas couldn't direct Brahmanas?
Kshatriyas couldn't, the Brahmins were in charge of the Kshatriyas.
No,
Yeah.
the Kshatriyas couldn't direct the Brahmanas.
Yeah, they say there's four different political systems that work all at the same time. For the Brahmins, there's anarchy. Nobody tells the Brahmins tell them, if you don't do it right, then you get cursed, like the king Vena. Then the kings obviously follow monarchy. The Vaishyas follow capitalism, they're all entrepreneur, all out trying to compete. And the Shudras communism, everyone is equal, everyone is the same, everyone's the same, there's no enemies. So you have all four working at the same time. And it doesn't work if you try and have one system, because one system will only work for one type of person. So you had the hippies trying to be anarchists because they could see the bigger picture. They thought they didn't want to comply with society and they didn't want to keep clean and turn up at a job and be responsible. They wanted to just think of bigger things. So even though they said, look, no, everyone's going to just toe the line, it was hard for them to follow an agency. So how to accommodate all the different types. Of course, first of all, it would be very useful to recognize that there's 4 different types, because if you recognize there's 4 different types of people, and right from the word go, at the point of education, you can decide how to, by what the child's inclinations, you can train the child accordingly, and the child's happy, he's doing what he wants to do, and then the kids will really, their real potential will be tapped into. So from an early age, find out what the child is like, according to the child's qualities, not according to who he was born from, but according to the qualities he shows.
That kind of degradation of the 4 social orders that you've described there, it's been very apparent. You can trace the history even in our history books. We see the history even in Europe of how the sort of so-called Brahmins or the religious people have less and less influence over the rulers, and then the business people eventually got power, and now it's like, as you say, it's the kind of Shudras. But it would also seem that it was there to a certain degree even in other yugas, and that
Prone to degradation.
yes.
Yeah.
So If that's the case, that in the Kali Yuga it becomes heavy, comes again, it will come again in the future, then is it not is it not a little futile just to put so much energy into trying to change things? Is it not more intelligent just to accept that that's the way it is and just try to be Krishna conscious?
Yes, so Jericho was saying, has that been picked up on? Yeah. So, so if I understood your question properly, even in other yugas, never mind Kali Yuga, it's difficult to establish these four different social orders: Shudra, Vaishya, Kshatriya, Brahman. So therefore, rather than try to establish them, why not just... It's not so much establish actually, it's more, Srila Prabhupada said you can cover the sun with clouds, but the sun doesn't disappear. So you can cover the social orders, you can really cover them, you can really get them mixed up like anything about how they're supposed to be functioning. But it really covers them, it's not that you're establishing them, it's more that you're trying to clarify and identify them again. Because somebody may somebody may go into the hospital and he may have really messed up his body, and the doctor could say, well, you keep doing this, and now you've got your arm where your leg's supposed to be. I put the leg in the right place the last time, and you're back. So I'm just going to chant Hare Krishna. It's up to you, But no, you're trying to restore the natural order. You would naturally want to do that. And people would appreciate as well if it's clarified how they should be behaving and what their role is, what their duties are, how they should be living their lives. Then people are very happy because they're rightly situated and we're trying to help them to become happy so that they feel that they can be. The reason why suicide and all forms of depression are going on is because people are disconnected from reality. They're living in this virtual world which isn't real, and so therefore they don't really feel like they're making any progress. So that's okay at first. Seems okay at first, but you go on, the burden weighs heavier and heavier as death looms up in front, and you suddenly realise my life has not been really in accord with the reality of existence. And more now it's becoming obvious that that's the case, So then it becomes a crushing burden for them. So in the beginning, people may not appreciate so much. When people are immature, when they're young, then they may not appreciate so much being identified. But I think, everyone is so fired up about Ayurveda, right? Because with Ayurveda, you find out what your doshas are, and everyone's really excited about that. Oh, I found out I'm Vata, and he's seeing over there, he's Pitta, and he's a Kapha, and then you're really excited. Wow, so that means I have to do this, and that means I have to go for a walk in the frosty sunshine, because that's what you're supposed to do if you and I shouldn't wear this colour, and so you get fired up, and you think, wow, and you start doing it, it starts working, and you think, oh my God, this is amazing. So suddenly you find out, oh, I'm actually a Shudra. I've been trying to be a king and push people around, and give me a bit of metal, and he starts banging the metal. Oh, I'm so happy. It turns into a horseshoe, and that was so satisfying. I was really happy, and he finds out what he is. So you've got Shudras trying to be above their rank, and so it will cause them, as Bob Dylan once said, I won't repeat it in Bhagavatam, but he did say something very rude to a crowd of people, 60,000 people, that were just begging him to give them some direction. And a singer is a Shudra, and they're trying to put him on a pedestal as if he's a Brahmin, because he sang a few songs about Ellie Mae, and whatever it was he sang about, I Love You Baby, and then, okay, well could you tell us the meaning of life? So he said something very rude to them all, told them to get lost in a different word. Okay, at the end. That was the question. So, yeah.
So it's So everyone's born should get, or how do we classify, how can people delegate themselves to?
Well, what it means by everyone born a shooter, it means everyone is covered over. That's what it means, everyone is covered over. So whether you're a Brahmin or you're this or that, everyone's covered over. And if they're a shooter, they're doing well. They're actually Chandala all the time. Because the shooter just wants some. So they're lower than the, like eat anything anytime. So that's them covered over. But then you could uncover them, you could find out, well actually he's really likes to look after people, and he's really brave, he's a really good manager, and then you can cultivate that, you see. If you don't, then he'll just, if you don't have education, if you had no education at all in society, then everyone would be like animals. But that's just what the default is, unfortunately. So that's why, we kind of understand in the West as well, well, there needs to be some structure here, there needs to be some order, some discipline, some education. Otherwise, it's going to be really bad in the future. Otherwise, we're going to have all these crazy kids running around doing all kinds of stuff.
And you should probably say that there's a movement so that you can create some brahmanas so that you can lead society.
Yeah.
So as well as the young can head to society.
Yeah. And so that's what it is really. Maybe we join for all different types of reasons, but right from the word go, Rupa Goswami is asking us to become Prithivan Shashishat. He says go and make disciples all over the world. So you can't get around it. You can't avoid that in this one. Srila Rupa Goswami is the head of our Sampradaya, we are Rupa Nugas, and he's asking everyone to go out and make disciples all over the world. So, there's different types of gurus. There's one type of guru where you introduce people to spiritual life. There's another type of guru where you guide people and give them sufficient knowledge. That's Shiksha Guru. And then there's also the Diksha. So Shri Maharaj was saying there's been a little bit of an overemphasis on Diksha Guru in this one. Diksha Guru was there than anything else. But he was saying actually Shiksha Guru as well. Even your parents, you should show them respect. Bringing you up and bringing you into the world, and people who are helping you on a day-to-day basis to engage in devotional service, they should be shown respect. And we should see it as our responsibility to want to share what we've been given. We shouldn't just want to hold on to it ourselves selfishly. Think, well, I'm okay, I'm safe. That's your problem. Try to cultivate nice relationships with people and try and bring them along, and help them to see what their doshas are, help them to see what their inclinations are, help them to become more aware. Self-realization, become aware of yourself. Before you become aware of your unconditioned self, you have to become aware of your conditioned self. You have to become aware of how you're conditioned, and then you can think about how you're going to transcend it. How you are situated in the modes of eternal nature.
So inappropriate to suggest that a substantial body of people start practicing Krishna consciousness. Is it inappropriate to suggest that things would get better? Maybe Srila Prabhupada would sometimes say that if everyone became devotees, then the world would be more and more goodness. But there are examples in the Srimad Bhagavatam, especially like in the Mahabharata, that after the aftermath of the war, then even the Pandavas thinking that it was like the war was a disaster, even though spiritually they accept it as necessary. But so in the present situation in the world is being extremely precarious, is it inappropriate for us to make any kind of predictions or promises or that things would get better if people became Krishna conscious?
Well, you can see a candle in space from 12 miles away. That's what they reckon. It's only 12 miles away from the camera. If you're in a part of space where there's no light, you can find a dark bit where it's moved just a few times clouds, and you light a candle, you'll see it 12 miles away. So when you're in the dense darkness, even a little bit of illumination goes a long way. Hinabandu was making an interesting point. He said that if you have a happy cow, a cow has an aura of 30 meters. So if you have a happy cow, everyone in that immediate vicinity feels happy because the aura coming off the cow just makes them feel good. You know? I mean, they're finding now, what's it called, Raghunath? Cow therapy? Hog therapy? You cuddle a cow, right?
Cow cuddling.
Cow cuddling, yeah. Now the cow's not at Mangalati, and it would have a job trying to get a blue bag on its hoof, so it's not doing a lot of chanting. It's just being a cow, and that's okay. So what to speak of a devotee, Srila Prabhupada said, if you become a good devotee, hundreds of people will become happy, but they won't even know why. They'll just they'll just be seeing the bright side of life, but they won't consciously know what's going on. So it's kind of subversive. Srila Prabhupada said, now the brainwash books have entered, like into the bloodstream. So now there's no reversing the process. There's a lot of books buzzing on people's shelves in Scotland. Shiva Rama's made an announcement as well. He said in Navaraji Dar, because the worship of the deities is going on, then Vrindavan starts to manifest, Navadvip starts to manifest. So we're here, and people in Nesmahego, because the puja is going on, this whole area is becoming a holy place. If we stop doing the puja, then the holy ground recedes, whereas in Vrindavan, Mayapur, Jagannath Puri, it stays the dawn whether we do the puja or not. But here, if we keep the puja going, everything is done nicely, the deities are happy. And Gauranitai, I was hearing the other day, Srila Prabhupada was saying in Miami, he was saying, you're very fortunate that Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda have come here. He says, and they don't take any offense. He says, so it's a little difficult, he said, worshipping Radha Krishna. He said, for Gauranitai, you simply chant, sing Hare Krishna and dance. He says, and they'll be pleased if you just do that. So when we're dancing and singing, then and the deities are pleased, then the Dharma manifests. And then people are walking on this Mahego and they don't quite know what it is. And suddenly life doesn't seem that bad anymore. So that's the effect of practicing Krishna consciousness.
And then Srila Prabhupada said that even 1% of the whole world's population became Krishna conscious, then it would be a different, it would be even 1%.
Yeah, what's interesting about Krishna consciousness is when the Rath Yatra is going down the road, all the people that are looking and taking part are namabas. There's no aparadh, there's no offense. They see the chakra, they see the deity, they take some prasada. Maybe they're even derisively going, oh, adi, 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 adi. Or they're getting the full benefit. It's just namabas, no namaparada, no offense. So that way you could have 1% becoming Krishna conscious very easily. And the prashadam, all the prashadam is going out. Everyone's eating their soy chunk pasta, and that's making them Krishna conscious. Although we can't quite put the finger on what it is. You know? So yeah, it's interesting as well. If you look at the history, Lord Chaitanya. I've just been listening, Shiva Ramash was saying that Lord Nityananda had 11 of his cowherd friends, but he didn't have Sridham, you know, so he was looking for him and he found him, and Sridham was like really big. And he says, he goes up to me and says, who are you? He says, I'm Balaram. He says, no, you can't be Balaram, you're so titchy. He was like 5 meters high, and Balaram was a couple of meters. And he said, no, I'm Balaram. He says, we don't look like Balaram. And he says, you have to prove it. And he goes, no, I'm going to prove it. He goes, well, have a race. So they have a race, and Lord never beats him. He goes, okay, you're Balaram. And then he changes him and shrinks him down, and then he becomes Abhiram Thakur. So when Lord Chaitanya came, the whole crew came, everyone was there, you know, and there were so many great personalities that had come in his wake, you know. So he wasn't just thinking after 2021 that'll be it, it'll go downhill. He obviously wasn't thinking. A lot of personalities are involved, you know. And it's not just what's going on here as well, in Lesmahago, or UK, or Europe, or planet Earth. Your fame is spread throughout the three worlds. Srila Prabhupada said, my Guru Maharaj is now on the moon, preaching on the moon. So they're all over, it makes it all, the whole thing is it's a cosmic, the international society, the cosmic society for Krishna consciousness. That's actually what it is. And we're playing our little part. And maybe we cannot appreciate really what's going on. So we should just know that, well, I'm just a foot soldier. I just know what I have to do. And the bigger stuff is being left to the generals. And I just do my bit as a foot soldier.
Seems like since the movements of the time when 10,000 years, like the golden age, then the Lord will send some great acharyas and like Kshatriya, kind of
Raja Rishis.
To help with the movement, help spread it.
Yeah. Certainly, we're in the middle of something very big, you know, and we kind of personally anyway stumbled across something which was a lot better than I thought it was going to be. Kind of knew it was going to be. When I was at Chaitanya College, I was with Krishnangi, and we'd been reading the books, and we were waiting to get picked up actually. And this devotee must have been a bit mental. He went like that and then just ran past us. And I said to Krishnangi, "Did you see that?" And I was so on another planet. I thought it was a film set, and he was like playing an Indian or something because he had this like. I was thinking, maybe he's in a film, like a stuntman or something. And I phoned up and Tanavir Maharaj says, I sent somebody to pick you up. I said, no, we saw somebody go past with their bald head and like a big clump of hair, and this is like this pause, and he goes, if you want to join this movement, you're going to have to be a little intelligent. So then we took 8 hours till we finally got out. So in the evening time we came in, it was like 6 or 7 o'clock at night. We're traveling to Chaitanya College, and there's all these steps there, and it's smell the incense. And I was saying to Krishna, this is it. I always had this desire when I was a kid, because you remember Kung Fu with grasshopper, and the monks would be saying, oh, grasshopper, come along, and I thought, well, that would be amazing if I could be in a temple with monks saying far out things, you know. And there it was. Here next door these cool monks that were saying far out things all the time. They seemed so transcendental. This is it, you know. And that was only a glimpse of what it really is. And every day becomes more and more apparent how amazing it is, you know. How fortunate we are.
We're just reading this morning, Bhaktivinoda Thakur was saying about, kind of predicting the future, how the Westerners will come to Mayapur and they will be embracing, the local Vaishnavas. And so he was saying, why not? But he says it may take some time for things to become pure. He says not, obviously Prabhupada came and he is a pure devotee. And of course, it just takes time, as you can see from the history of our movement, for the purity to kind of manifest, and we kind of seem to be reaching, in that stage when a lot of devotees are very, very mature. And also, for eternal associates, I was thinking that Prabhupada, he wanted, that Krishna asked him, do you want to come? And Prabhupada said, no, I don't want to. But actually, for somebody's status of Prabhupada, doesn't want to come, not so much because it's austere, but it's more like separation from Krishna. While for ourselves, we don't want to do it because we are not kind of purified sufficiently. But when you have like a deities everywhere in temples and Radha Krishna and so on, I think is like a more likely that eternal associates of the Lord will start descending more to the movement. We maybe had just like a really few who are just like a totally prepared, but now we're gonna get like a more of those.
And what's really encouraging as well, Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, nothing happens immediately. He said the lotus grows from a stooly place. So it's something very beautiful, it's unfurling, and it's a work in progress. So you have to look at potentially what's going to happen as well. So that's an interesting way to look at it. Another thing which is really fascinating, what I've noticed is some of the initiating spiritual masters now. When I joined in 1980, they were there rubbing shoulders in the prasadam queue, and they didn't seem anything particularly special, other than just a rank and file devotee. But you see how the process of Krishna consciousness has really catapulted these devotees into a very exalted state. You can see they're just like they've come on so far, from where they were, and really blossomed. And it makes you see, wow, the process really works. If you just keep going, just keep plodding along, suddenly the whole thing just transforms, So it inspires you to see that, how a sadhaka has gone step by step and then come up onto a very elevated level of consciousness, And then those sadhakas will say to us, well, these are the steps you're taking.
As the Prabhupada says, be the children of our children that have the purity, and then they'll take up.
Well, that's interesting as well, because the children, you have devotees do some devotional service and then they maybe leave. Father rate was very high in the beginning. It's getting better now. So they go away and then they take back again. And then they become the children of the children and stuff. So they come back and they know the whole story. They know Mangalam, they know how to put a devotee on Tila. It's like they're taken up from where they've left off. And now they're in a society which is much more established, has much more resource. And there they are again for a second crack of the whip. But this time they're a lot more astute than they were previously. So you see how things. And then the preaching field itself, so many books are going out, so many people are getting prasadam, then they're dying, and they're taking birth again. So the ground becomes more fertile. People are coming back again, and they've had some exposure in the previous life. They've seen nothing extra, maybe they've been to a temple and had a feast, seen the deities, and now here they are back again. And then slowly, exponentially, you see how the thing will just build up and build up and build up.
That means that more and more people in the future will become favorable to Krishna consciousness because at some point they've had prasad and good, so it'll become more population and more take up Krishna consciousness.
Yeah. And this is, Lord Chaitanya didn't want just like a tiny fraction of people taking it and everybody else ensnared in all kinds of hellish. Lord Chaitanya was looking at how everyone could get it more readily. So it's very progressive and very encompassing. His vision, Mahatma is broad-minded. That's the way he's thinking how to help everybody. In a way which is progressive, favourable and progressive. And you have to become expert and patient, and you have to have the qualities as well. So people are attracted. And purity, so many things are there.
January from he's got a huge farm with his devotees and Gopal, what is it?
T-shirt.
they're in the public eye, speaking to all these people, so it's kind of mushing,
And you can be sure the heads of society, the more intelligent ones that have got to the top, they're probably more aware of the books and Krishna consciousness than they're letting others know, you know. And we're just getting on with it, but they're aware of it, you know. And because they can be exposed to so many things, then they can pick up on that as well, you know. So it's
That's interesting because there's that story about two Chinese, like highly ranked politicians who both had come in contact with Srila Prabhupada's books, and then both of them were terrified that anyone was going to find out. So, but they were very close friends, and then they had the books for about 15 years, and then finally one of them said, "I want to show you something." So he had a secret library of Prabhupada's books, and then he showed his friend these, and then his friend had a secret library in his room as well. So you think you would think, oh well, British politicians wouldn't need to do that, but in one sense, there may be an even bigger sort of fear, with the sort of political correctness, and maybe an even bigger fear. You might have some politicians with secret libraries of Prabhupada's books.
Queen's Guard as well.
Sorry?
Queen's Guard, the grandchild used to see him, and the grandfather disappeared into the attic and then looked through the keyhole, and there'd just be this chest, and then he'd open up the chest and she couldn't see him anymore. And when he died, she went up there and it was just full of Prabhupada's books.
The Queen's Guard?
Yeah, some high ranking.
what you mean, going with the big...
I don't know. Someone very close to the Queen.
So that's what's happening. It's all kind of spreading. It's compared to the bamboo, isn't it? The bamboo doesn't look like it's doing much. You keep watering it for years, and then finally it just shoots up out of the ground, and it's been laying its roots. So it seems like nothing much is happening, but it's all seeping into society. People are reading the books, becoming more aware. You know, when you read the books, you realise that the author knows what he's talking about. That's the first thing that comes across. The next thing is you're thinking, it's too elaborate to have really been just made up himself. And then the person who wrote the books, you know, he was so old, obviously wasn't in it for anything for himself. So these things kind of permeate into society. And you don't see much happening on the surface, but then suddenly there'll be like a massive explosion.
It's just this pandemic, people stuck in their homes, and so many of them must have Prabhupada's books and taken the time to expose themselves to them.
Yeah.
So
If you look on the bookshop, right? You know, if you see the mushroom plant, I think, oh no, they've done it. And then you look at the bookshop, Enid Blyton, famous for autobiography of Brad Pitt. Scientists have a quick at that, and scientists organization, what's that all about, you know? And suddenly it becomes really interesting, right? Everything else is just another, you know, kind of, that's a waste of time. Anyway, you know. So, you know, what's going on a subliminal level is hard for us to put the finger on. But if we practice Krishna consciousness nicely, then we can create a powerful aura, and when people think of us, if we're strong devotees, then when they think of us, they become purified by thinking of us. So anyone, our friends, relatives, people we come in contact with, the interactions will have a good effect. Okay, I will finish there. This Guru in the key.
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki.
Jai.
Go Premanandi.
Haribol. His Grace Adhoksaja Krishna Prabhu ki. Jai.
Oh, you ki jai. Go to the
Hare Krishna, Hare